Hello everyone and welcome back to another Strategoi video. I know I promised you guys that the next video I was going to make was going to be a Lumineth guide, but here we are with a first impressions video on the GHB 22-23, but season 2 guys, so it's coming up very soon, apparently at the start of the year, and there's been some information on Warhammer community that I thought I would highlight in this video. They've hidden quite a lot of minor details in both their video and their article, so I kind of condensed them all into this video and I'll add my first impressions on it as well. As usual with these kind of videos, they're not scripted. I made a quick PowerPoint, so it's not anything that's the usual quality that you can expect. But we're just putting this out there, and as usual, we really want these videos to be some kind of catalyst for the conversation, either on our Discord or in the comments. So please let us know what you think about the General's Handbook, possibly after watching this video. And if you're looking forward to it, are you planning on using it? Are you happy the old one's going? Please let us know. Okay, so first off, we're just going to go over all the information that was in the Warhammer community article. Obviously, you can go and read those yourself, but we'll put everything that's in there in this video for sure. So the key to this GHB is not going to be Galician veterans anymore, but we're swapping over to Galician champions, where the focus is no longer on battle line units, but is now on non-unique heroes. So that's very important to remember. All of these minor heroes that are below 10 wounds and are not on a mount need to be unique, non-unique before they become Galician champions. And when they become Galician champions, they gain certain benefits. For example, the first one is pretty huge. Friendly Galician champions cannot be picked as a target of attacks made with missile weapons while they are within 1 inch of any friendly battle line units. If any of you guys have played 40k in any of the previous iterations, or maybe are playing Horus Heresy as I am right now, you will know how big it is of an impact on a game when you can't snipe the synergistic heroes out of a certain unit or army. So this is pretty big. Especially for the kind of heroes that were already pretty inclined to stay in the back with, let's say, a ranged unit, and were prone to getting sniped. That will probably be way less easy than it was before. There are still ways you can do it. There is a battalion, for example. It's a bit of a spoiler. There is going to be a battalion where you can allow your ranged units to still target Galician champions because they're Galician snipers. What do you know? So there is still some counterplay, but it's pretty cool, and it also synergizes pretty well with the battle line units, which is nice. Key here is also that you have to be within 1 inch, which is pretty close. So if you're planning on keeping your backline heroes safe, you also need a backline unit, and vice versa. If you want your heroes to get into combat, this rule will make it much easier for small heroes to get into combat, but you need that 1 inch within a battle line unit at least to stay safe. You also get desperate action. If you are taking the second turn in the current battle round, at the start of your hero phase, you can pick one friendly Galician champion on the battlefield to carry out 2 different heroic actions in that phase instead of 1. So they've been doing this for quite a while now, where they're trying to make the second turn more appealing, either as something that you choose willingly or that you're kind of forced to take. And this is a cool way, I think, especially for certain armies that have a lot of heroic actions, like Skaven, for example. Certain Skaven builds can really go nuts with this desperate action. If I'm looking at Lumineth, for example, because we're still a little bit of a Lumineth channel, obviously, that might be less impactful, but we'll get to that later. It's still pretty cool, though, to get those different heroic actions, though I do need to point out it's at the start of your hero phase. So if you're going second, you're only getting the 2 heroic actions during your turn, not during your opponent's. So something that they refer to in the video and also in the article is the aspect of the champion. This is basically an extra unique enhancement that you're going to get alongside your spells and your other artifacts, for example, and your command traits. you're getting one of those for free, and it's only for the Galician champions. I'm expecting things that would possibly make a small hero into a bit more of a blender, for example, so that you're more inclined to push your champions forward. If I was a game designer, that's at least what I would do, because in that way you still have a bit of a counterplay where you're benefiting from that key to victory rule, and you can still use your desperate action more often with best time ever, for example. But you're also a little bit more inclined to put your heroes in a risky zone, right? Because you're getting into melee, and in melee they're not as protected as they are from ranged in this GHB. So that's pretty cool. I'm looking forward to all those enhancements. If I'm a little bit skeptical, and I am obviously, there is obviously a big chance that there's going to be one or two standouts and all the others are not going to be picked. But you know, I'm staying optimistic right now, as I tend to do as well. And we're just gonna have to wait and see. So the next thing is 2 heroic actions that you could do together if you're, or in sync at least, if you're going second, for example. And this really makes it way more appealing to go second, because these heroic actions you can only do back to back if you're going second, or if you have a special rule or a special unit that allows for an extra heroic action. So the first one's pretty cool. Strike at the opening. Pick 1 friendly Galician champion within 3 inches of an enemy unit. So that's a non-unique hero with less than 10 wounds and no mount. That's already in combat with an enemy unit. So he's already been there for at least a turn. That hero can fight if it has not already fought in that phase. However, that hero cannot fight again in that phase, and the strike loss effect applies to that hero until the end of the turn, so not the end of the phase. So a couple of things to unpack here. As I mentioned, your hero already has to be in combat for this to work. So if you're going second and your opponent charges you and your hero survives, you can use this. But this is not something that you're going to be able to use on your own turns, unless that hero's been in combat since the previous round, obviously. Then you also cannot fight again in that hero phase. So say you're using Marathi's command ability to fight twice, for example. You can't do that with that specific hero. That is also pretty important for the next heroic action, by the way. And then also for the entirety of the turn, you're going to strike last. So even if you fought in the hero phase, you can still fight in your own combat phase, but you're fighting last. I think that balances out quite nicely. I like their approach that they're going at right now, where they're granting more options to attack out of sync, I would say, or out of the usual rotation, but you're getting punished a little bit by striking last later on. So that's pretty cool. But if you're going with back-to-back heroic actions due to the previous ability that we showed, you can do this as well. So pick 1 friendly Galician champion that has a sworn bodyguard unit. Sworn bodyguard is something from a battalion, we'll get to that later. And that has just carried out the strike at the opening heroic action. So you can only ever do this heroic action by going second in this GHB. If that sworn bodyguard unit is wholly within 6 inches of the Galician champion and within 3 inches of an enemy unit, that sworn bodyguard unit can fight if it has not already fought in that phase. However, here we go again. However, that unit cannot fight again in that phase, and the strike loss effect applies to that unit until the end of the turn. This is pretty cool. They've been trying to brute force this into certain hero builds already. So you have the Soul Blight rule, for example, where you can already do this with all of your small non-mounted champions. This is pretty good. This is actually a pretty cool ability in Soul Blight. I really like this because I play Virkos, and if I'm running my Radukar and 20 Graveguard alongside of him, that's a pretty neat trick. Obviously you can't do this with Radukar because he's a named hero, but you can do this with a Vampire Lord or a smaller hero as well. This would also be pretty cool with a Stone Mage, for example. You're running a Stone Mage alongside your Stone Guard, and that would be a pretty tough hit, you know, to take that hit twice for example, if first in your hero phase and then later on in your combat phase. And keep in mind, this is probably best used on units that are either going to delete the enemy unit before they can strike you back in the combat phase because you're going to strike last, or take the hit back in the combat phase. So those Stone Guard, for example, in your Magicka would do very well because they can sustain a lot of damage, and if they can deal their damage beforehand, then take some more punishment and then deal damage again with the strike last effect, that is pretty rough. So this will probably be a big thing. I think you're going to be looking at certain forces or certain builds where you really want to go second if you know that your units can take the punch at least. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Then we get to the battalions, and as I said, we were going to find out how you became a sworn bodyguard. So here you have to combine a Galician champion with one standard infantry unit, and if that infantry unit and Galician veteran are both in this battalion, they get this united in purpose rule. The infantry unit in this battalion is the sworn bodyguard of the Galician champion in this battalion. In the combat phase, when you pick the Galician champion in this battalion to fight for the first time in that phase, if the sworn bodyguard unit in this battalion is wholly within 6 inches of the Galician champion and has not yet fought in that phase, the Galician champion and the sworn bodyguard can fight one after the other in the order of your choice. So this is pretty much what I was referring to when I mentioned the Soul Blight synergy rule. This is basically the same thing. So that's pretty cool. If you're Lumineth, you're not very impressed because we do this all the time. Though, to be fair, you're going to be able to do triple activations with this, because you pick a unit, then you pick a hero, and then you pick another unit, your sworn bodyguard unit with that hero. So you could potentially fight 3 times in a row, which is nuts. You know, obviously the counterpart of that is that we don't really have melee units, or at least non-unique melee units that we want in close combat for Lumineth. But this is going to be massive for certain armies. I really think this is going to shake up the meta a lot. This entire GHB feels so impactful. We'll get into that later, but that's really cool. There's also the second battalion that has been spoiled a little bit, but not as thoroughly as this one. So they mentioned that it was going to be called Galician Sharpshooters, and it allows ranged units to still shoot at Galician champions. Right now, that's all we know. We don't know how many ranged units you're going to be able to squeeze into that sharpshooter unit. We don't know whether there's going to be range restrictions, maybe. What we can expect, I think, and that's realistic, is that just as in the previous GHB, we're probably going to only be able to take every battalion once. So you might only be able to take a Galician command once and also only a Galician sharpshooter unit once, or battalion once. So this is interesting, because if you're looking at complete ranged build armies, this is going to reduce their flexibility a lot. If you're looking at Caradron, for example, you're really going to have to think about which units you want to be in that battalion, so that you can still pick out heroes. But if those units are out of range, for example, or they're killed, you're going to have a tough time dealing with these ranged threats. So that's going to be big. I think for Lumineth this is pretty cool, because Sentinels would obviously suffer massively from the previous rule there. And now with the Galician Sharpshooters, I think 2 units, for example, would not be too crazy to put in such a battalion if they allowed that. And that would be still be pretty good. Okay, so what else can we expect from this GHB? Well, going or building upon the extra information that I got from the article, this is what we can expect. There's going to be a 3rd battalion. The rules are, as of the release of this video, still unknown. What would I like to see? You know, I think if we're focusing on these champions, it would be super cool if there was a battalion where you were able to combine certain Galician champions into one battalion, and maybe they had to stay within range of one another, for example. But you get this this council almost of melee blender heroes, that would be so cool. Can you imagine running like 3 or 4 even vampire lords and maybe you're allowed to count them as a unit or something, and they all get to take one of those artifacts? That would be massively cool. But I don't think they'll go that route, but that would be cool. There's also going to be new grand strategies and battle tactics, sorry. They did confirm that it's going to be 50-50, so part of them are going to be new and a part of them are going to be the ones we already play with now in the current Season 1. I expect all the Galician veteran-related tactics to go, obviously, because Galician veterans are not going to be a thing anymore, thank God, and the others will probably stay. So if you're opening your GHB right now, you can probably cross out the tactics that, or mentally cross out, I hope, the tactics that we're not going to be able to use anymore. There's also going to be new battle plans alongside some of the old ones, which is interesting. I really didn't like all the battle plans from the previous GHB, or at least this GHB, I should say. So I'm really looking forward to the new ones. I'm very curious which ones they're aiming to retain in the new GHB. I hope they really looked at the tournament data for this and listened to the community here, so that they can at least make sure that they keep the cool ones in and the good ones, the balanced ones in. Because if you're playing with a GHB, you're probably aiming at a competitive side anyway, and I feel like in a GHB it should all be aimed at competitive gaming almost. If you're more of a casual gamer, I'm sure you wouldn't mind changing up certain mission rules, but I really don't like the certain battle plans from the current GHB that were really set up to just fuck over certain armies. Excuse my English. But for example, if you had the battle plan where you were not allowed to teleport, that would just punish Sylvaneth armies, for example, so hard. So I really hope they get rid of those battle plans. There's also going to be a realm spell again. Maybe we'll see the realm spell used this time around. Who knows? And that it's going to punish units for camping on objectives. So I imagine it's either going to go in effect when you're targeting a unit that has an objective, or maybe they'll go as far as to say that they already have to have controlled the objective for maybe a turn or a round even. That would be cool. This is interesting. I don't really see the synergy with the other rules right now, but to be honest, if you're building a balanced GHB, I don't want everything to be about those heroes anyway. So this is pretty cool. The command ability I also hope to see someday, because I don't think I've ever used the previous command ability from this GHB at all in all the games that we've played or seen played. You're going to be able to trade in your pylon for extra attacks. This is pretty big. If you think about the newest books that have been released, a lot of ranges have increased from 1 inch to 2 inch. And that was a bit of a tryout, I think, from the current GHB where you were allowed to fight into 2 ranks. That's probably going to go. Maybe it'll still be in, but that might go. I expect it to go at least. And then that's pretty big. If you're fighting with a unit that already has a big range on their attacks, you might not want to pile in. And if they give you 1 extra attack, or maybe, God forbid, double your attacks, that would be crazy. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this, especially on the Lumineth side. This is looking really nice, because Swordmasters, Blade Lords I should say, Wardens especially obviously, and then Stoneguard all have massive range on their attacks, so this is going to be insane for certain armies. It'll be really interesting. I do fear a little bit for the older armies that have not had this new approach with bigger range on melee profiles. They will probably not benefit as much from this. Though to be fair, if this command ability is going to be an ability that you have to trigger in the combat phase, which I fully expect it will be, then you're competing again with an all-out attack and all-out defense, and that might make you reconsider certain command abilities here. There's also going to be new artifacts, as we mentioned, probably alongside the free artifacts that you're going to get there. as well. So that's cool. Okay, so what can we expect when it comes to impact on the meta? So I think the intended impact here is a little bit in line with what we've seen in previous edition and even in previous game systems from Games Workshop, where they really want to try out whether they might include, I think, this rule where you're not able to snipe enemy heroes maybe even in the next edition as a whole, as just a standard rule. The GHBs now are more of a experimental approach anyway, so I think that they're really going to look at how the game is going to evolve if that would be a standard thing, if you're not able to snipe heroes if they're within 1 inch of a battle line unit. It also makes battle line units a little bit less of a feel bad to use, and you're really playing on that aspect where your hero is being protected by a small bodyguard unit, which I'm really fond of. I do fear that the intended impact will be a little bit skewed. So what I expect the impact to be is going to shake up the meta a whole lot. I think this might be the most impactful change that they've done so far in the previous GHBs, because if you're looking at Age of Sigmar as a whole compared to maybe Warhammer Fantasy, if you've played that, or other gaming systems, Age of Sigmar has not had a lot of standalone heroes apart from all the god characters, obviously, in the previous editions, where you could just run or build a character as a complete blender and kill units on the spot. Heroes have always been more of this kind of buff wagon, I would say, and being able to take apart those buffs or take out those buffs was probably one of the most important parts of your Age of Sigmar game. Now with your minor heroes being safe from shooting, that will be massive. Certain armies will just find it so easy to keep all of their buffs on all the time, because it's just not going to be able to shoot or to snipe anything. Certain armies will just not be able to fill the Galician's sharpshooters battalion at all. Think of Soulblight, for example. They have little to no shooting anyway, so that's, it's a benefit for them as well, obviously. But if you're wanting to snipe a hero with a breath attack, for example, you're probably not going to be able to. So that's quite big. If I'm thinking about Seraphon, for example, they are going to love this change to protect their small heroes, but they're also going to suffer because obviously they're also pretty big on the sniping characters aspect of the game. What will also be pretty big is caster armies with offensive spells. So I'm not looking at Lumineth right now, but I'm thinking about Tzeentch, for example. They are going to have a field day, because they also have a lot of shooting, but a list that's centered around sniping characters with magic from enemy characters or your own characters, for example. That is pretty strong, especially because people are going to start building army lists with the protection of that rule in mind, where your hero is not going to be able to get sniped anyway. And then if you come up against a magic list that can still do that, and you don't have any of your protections built in that you might have taken otherwise, you're going to lose your heroes pretty fast against those kind of lists. So I think if we're looking at immediate impact on armies, Tzeentch is going to, certain Tzeentch lists are going to love this. I think armies that have suffered from being sniped often are also going to like this a lot. I'm thinking of Soulblight, for example. Vampire Lords have always been pretty strong, but they're also, as a command ability carrier, for example, but they're also very prone to getting sniped. Now you want your Vampire Lords to walk alongside your Graveguard or something else anyway, and now they're pretty safe from enemy fire, so that's cool. It's also very cool that you're finally, probably, rewarded for taking battle line units in certain sub-factions. So before, I kind of felt like we were all shying away from taking as many battle line as we could, whereas now you probably want the opposite. If you have the option of making a unit a battle line unit, you're probably going to want to do that just because they're going to be able to protect your heroes much more easily. So that's neat. I'm really curious how things are going to shape out if we're seeing all the things. Obviously, I wouldn't want anyone to judge the GHB purely on the video that we've made right here. We've only made or we've only put out information that we've seen on the online article. There is much more to come. I remember Ryan and I doing a similar video for the Season 1 GHB, where we thought that Expert Conquerors was going to be this completely broken mechanic in game, and then they released Bounty Hunters in a later article, and we were like, oh, okay, Bounty Hunters is way stronger than we expected it to be. And now we're almost all shying away from battle tactics and even from Expert Conquerors. So yeah, it is going to be interesting. Do keep in mind, Bounty Hunters and Expert Conquerors are also going. So yay, we're finally going to be able to use certain sub-factions. I'm thinking about Alumni and Lumineth, for example, and they are going to be useful. So I'm looking forward to it, honestly. I've always liked the hero hammer aspect of the game. I do hope G-dubs have thought up well about how things are going to shape up when their gaming system was not really built for this kind of rule. I think certain command abilities or command auras or hero auras are so strong because the system allowed you to take those units out. So you're paying premium price for a big command ability or for a big bubble, because you know that you're probably going to only be able to use that for 1 or 2 turns. Now you might be able to use it for an entire game, and your prices might not go up for that. So that's interesting. We might still see some point hikes, for example. Usually with new GHBs, we get rewritten endless spells and new points. But as it stands now, I don't really expect them to go that route, because this is still GHB 22-23. It's just Season 2 now. So I think they're probably leaving the points and the endless spells as they are now, and are just going to allow us to enjoy or suffer this rule. As always, I'm super curious what you guys think. Please let me know in the comments what you're looking forward to, insights that I might have missed, or things that I maybe got wrong. You know that these preview videos are put out on a high pace, or at a high pace, and that I'm just really looking forward to get the conversation going. So I look forward to reading your comments, and I'll see you in the next video, which is probably going to go up somewhere after Christmas, because then I finally have time to playtest some more. Though I do feel that a guide might be badly timed now with the new GHB coming, but we'll see how we go. When the new GHB is out, though, expect a full analysis as I did for the previous one, where I'm going through every mission for Lumina specifically, but also in general. So mission, artifacts, everything. And we'll have some more time to think about that later. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.